haven't posted a video in a while, but without doubt, my most popular videos are a day in the life of an account executive. So today, I'm going to take you through what a typical day looks like working in tech sales in the UK.
Back from this morning's workout, which was an upper body focus session. I'm now I've had a shave, shower, got dressed, and now I'm having breakfast. So this morning I've got 4 eggs, avocado, and then supplements wise, I've had my greens powder, electrolytes, creatine, vitamin D, fish oil, and joint support as well. So those are kind of my go-to every morning, along with this breakfast. It's kind of become a staple the last few weeks while tracking calories. So that's breakfast before getting into the day. So usually my day starts at around about 8:30, depending on what I have in the calendar, but usually we have a meeting of some sort at 8:30 most days throughout the week. Today we don't, so I'm just going through my calendar, looking at what today has in store, going through Slack, going through my emails, and just seeing if there's been any updates overnight, basically. Especially on Slack, we are a global company and the headquarters are in Australia, so a lot of the team are that side of the world, which means any kind of updates on Slack, any product updates, any news tends to happen overnight. So just coming in first thing in the morning and just seeing if there's any kind of updates that affect the UK team, any product updates that might be quite important to know, just small details really this time in the morning while eating my breakfast. So that's what I'm going to do for the next 30 minutes or so. Okay, it is now 9 a.m. I've got the first coffee of the day to get things going. And this next hour for me, do this pretty much every day. It is my morning prep, and what that essentially looks like is just anything urgent that needs responding with current deals, any answers I need to get back to people, anything that I set yesterday as a task to do today is what I kind of use the next hour for. I also use it as prep time for calls that I have today. So going through the SDR notes, doing some research on LinkedIn, seeing who may be joining the call, just to get a good understanding of that and making sure I'm fully prepared going into those first calls, and also any follow-up calls I have, making sure I'm prepared for them as well. And then it's also a chance the next hour to just go through my current deals and see what I can do to really try and move them along the sales cycle, because ultimately as an AE, your kind of main goal and task is to achieve a revenue number. So each month, each quarter, you're gonna have a goal that you're looking to hit, and that's ultimately what you're gonna be judged on as an AE. So first part of the morning for me is what can I do to get me towards my goal each month, and that's what I'm going to spend the next hour doing. Also, something I would highly recommend is a standing desk. If you're working in an office or working from home, typically you sit down most of the day, and for me that's what I've been doing for the last year or so. I started to notice I was getting tight in my hips, my lower back, I was picking up injuries. So for the last few weeks I've been utilizing a standing desk. It is my bedside table because I haven't got a standing desk just yet. I will in the new year, need to get around to that, but it's been super useful to kind of reduce pains in my body essentially. My hips feel a lot better, my lower back feels better, so something worth incorporating into your day, that's for sure, if you can. Okay, it is now 10 a.m. I'm going to move on to some outbound prospecting. So I tend to block out my calendar into different chunks just so I can stay focused on a task. Otherwise my mind would wander and I probably wouldn't end up getting anything done at all. So 10 a.m. I tend to do this maybe 3 times a week. I try and block out periods where I focus on outbound prospecting because I like to add around 30 new accounts each week to my sequences and outreach. So whether that's emails, LinkedIn, cold calls, videos, a bunch of different ways of trying to contact new people, new businesses, and then just trying to generate some new revenue and add it to my pipeline. So again, it's typically quite big as an SDR if you're just getting into sales, but it's also, I think, quite important to keep doing it as an AE just to add to your pipeline and generate your own revenue. So that's what I'm going to do for the next hour. For me, a big part of that is going on Sales Navigator, trying to find companies that would be a good fit to reach out to. So whether they've got somebody in the business who's just joined in a new role, whether somebody who's used our product before is in that business, whether they're going through a funding round, hiring, whatever it is, trying to do some research and identify a reason why I'd reach out to them in the first place. Are they a good fit because we work with a lot of companies in that industry? Stuff like that, basically. So I'm going to spend the next hour doing that on Sales Navigator and then pulling those contacts into Salesforce before putting them into sequences. And again, it's just kind of part of being an AE. Some AEs maybe don't do it as much, some do more, really depends kind of, and it really depends as well on how your week looks. Again, I try and block out certain periods throughout the week to do it. Otherwise, I probably would never get round to it. I'd just be busy doing other things. So I really try and time block for this specifically because I have been able to find some good leads that I've been able to bring in and reach out to. So that's what we're going to do for the next hour. Okay, so this is what it looks like to use Sales Navigator when doing your outbound prospecting. So trying to find, again, accounts or contacts that are a good fit for your product or your service. Essentially, you're going to put in certain filters. So for myself, the product that I'm selling, ideally it's going to be United Kingdom based company. Headcount wise, I'm going to put in from all the way from 11, we're going to do all the way up to 1,000 employees. So that's kind of the benchmark for companies. And then what we're also going to do is pull in past customers. So anybody who, again, is being pulled from our CRM that have previously used our product or service. And again, you can go into loads more detail. You can then pull in people from certain geographies. Are they in the CRM? Category interest, buyer intent, following your company. There's so many different filters that you can use and utilize within here to try and find good contacts to go after. Okay, it is just coming up to 11 o'clock and the next part of my day, I have a call with a business. So again, typically as an AE, you're very customer facing. You're speaking with people on a daily basis, and being comfortable talking with people is quite important. So you have kind of a number of different types of calls with businesses. One is usually the discovery call, which is the first call usually, where you're just trying to get an understanding if this is something that's going to work for both parties, understand their challenges and how your product or service may be able to help them. So really just a deep dive of understanding kind of how they've come to the call and what they're trying to achieve. And then you typically have demos or demonstrations, which typically involves the AE then showcasing the platform and how it's going to help based on what they've heard in that first call. So really trying to customize that demo to meet their needs and showcasing how it's going to help. And then you tend to have follow-up calls. You may have multiple demos, really depends on your product or service. Typically, maybe we have 2 or 3 demos showcasing different areas. And then you typically have follow-up calls where you may be answering questions from previous calls, questions that have come up since speaking internally, until ultimately you get to maybe the later stages where we're kind of at with this business, where we're finalizing contracts, going through commercials before hopefully they sign and proceed with us as a business. So that's kind of where we're at with this call. It's typically the calls you'll have. So again, if you like speaking to people, like talking to people, then it's typically what's going to be involved as part of your role as an account executive. Okay, it is now 12 o'clock. So I spent the last hour on a call with a business and then spent the last half hour just doing some admin. Well, I say admin, going back and forth with a current deal, answering some questions for them, some key requirements that they needed answers for. So I've just gone back to them on that, and then also sending out a contract for a current business to sign up with us, which is always good, and they've returned that, which is awesome. So that's been the last half hour. It's now midday, so I'm going to pop out and get lunch, which usually for me, as I mentioned, I'm trying to sit in a deficit at the moment. So lunch is typically some form of meat, either beef mince, chicken thighs or salmon, along with kale, carrots and onion. That's kind of my go-to lunch at the moment. Okay, it is just coming up to 1:30 and the calls I had booked in for this afternoon, one was a follow-up call and one was a brand new first call. They've both been rescheduled. So it now means that I've got nothing in my calendar for this afternoon, which sometimes does happen. You can have days where you're just constantly back to back with calls and it can feel a bit overwhelming at times. You're literally going from call to call. But then you have days like today when you're kind of prepared for these calls and then they end up rescheduling. So then you kind of have a lot of free time. So what I tend to do in those blocks where they have been rescheduled is try and utilize that time the best I can to progress my current deals forward. So for me, that's now going to involve using Trumpet, which is a digital sales room. And if you're not using that as an AE, highly recommend seeing if your company can purchase something like that. It is basically a one-stop shop for all the information when you're speaking with a business. So you can include pricing in there, data and security, implementation information, short videos on certain areas of the platform, really just kind of a one-stop shop for all the information and kind of the project you're discussing. So it's really useful, and you can share it with other people in the business. So if they haven't been on those calls, they can easily come in and just see all that information. So would highly recommend it. But what I'm going to do is add some videos, record them myself, specific for this client who had a certain requirement. I'm going to show them how it looks on our platform, record that, and then add it to the pod. So that's my plan for this afternoon. I'm also then going to do a bit more outbound work. Although it is December and it's a tough month typically to try and get new meetings booked in, it is a good opportunity to try and get your foot in the door, so to say, and get these booked in maybe for the new year as well if there is some interest there. Because a lot of people tend to want to maybe get something in place for the new financial year, which is in April. So again, if you can get these meetings in January, they can turn around pretty quick sometimes into February. So we're going to do a bit more outbound work, and then we're going to wrap up for the day with our admin that we need to do. Okay, it's now 3 o'clock and I spent the last half an hour basically just trying to help a current deal resolve some issues that they were having. They started emailing me, they couldn't log into the trial account basically, so I had to try and resolve that for them. And again, that's part of just the role as an AE. You kind of construct your day in the best way possible, lay it out in terms of what you're going to achieve, but then if something urgent comes up while you're doing something, you can't just have to drop it and just get to it. So that's what I did the last half an hour. So now I'm going to spend the next hour doing some more outbound, as I mentioned, and some accounts into sequences, and really just trying to achieve that target of 30 accounts a week. See if I can get pretty close to it today now that I've got the time, so that then later on in the week I can utilize some of that time back for other things. So that is the plan for the next hour or so. Okay, it is just coming up to 4:30, about to join a internal meeting, a team call, which we have at the end of every day this month. Essentially just a kind of a wrap up for the team, whereby we kind of cover any deal changes, good or bad, for kind of key deals that we forecasted for this month, alongside kind of 2 actions that we're going to commit to achieve tomorrow. That's essentially going to help, again, deliver on your December number. So I'm going to go through that now with the team. And I don't think I've mentioned in this video, but we are like a fully remote company, so we don't have an office. We kind of meet up maybe once or twice a quarter, but a lot of obviously our internal calls, we have them quite regularly throughout the week because we are a fully remote company. So again, this is just a way of staying in touch, communicating with the team. So we're going to join this now. But it's just gone past 5 o'clock, and for me now, this time of day, it means to just do my admin that I need to complete, and essentially that's just tidying up CRM, so adding any notes, next steps that need to be logged on the system, and then just making sure that all the tasks that I had for today that I can just complete, that I've done basically. So yeah, gonna spend the next half hour or so going through that, just making sure it's all good, and then just making sure I'm fully prepped for tomorrow. I've got 3 calls booked in. One's a new demo, one's 2 are follow-ups. So I just want to make sure I'm kind of fully prepared for them ultimately. So I'll probably spend the next half hour to an hour doing that while eating some of this, which is going to be my pre-run fuel. It's basically frozen fruit, got blueberries in there, some mixed fruits along with chia seeds, some honey, some yogurt, and then also some dark chocolate as well. So this is kind of my go-to at the moment before going on a run after work. So I'm going to eat this, do my admin, and then we're going to go out and head on a run. Okay, it is just coming up to 6 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap up for today and get ready to head out on this evening's run. But did want to just recap today a little bit. I would say as an AE, your days do vary, but then there's also a lot of crossover in terms of your core roles and responsibilities that you kind of have to do. Obviously, as you've seen today, sometimes you'll have calls booked in, but they'll be rescheduled, so then it kind of frees up time, which I utilized today to really just focus on tasks that I needed to complete and get answers for on certain deals. But usually, you've kind of got your, as I said, your morning prep where you're kind of preparing for these calls or the calls the next day, ensuring that you've done the research prior to them. You've got your outbound work or prospecting where you're actively reaching out to new businesses and actively trying to find new accounts to reach out to that would look like a good potential fit. You've then got your first calls, discovery calls with potential new businesses, and then your demos, which can be 2, 3, or 4 demos that you do to a business, along with any kind of follow-ups and answering questions in between those calls for businesses where you weren't able to get an answer to them on that call, or specific technical questions that you maybe couldn't answer. There's all kind of those roll into one in terms of those follow-up calls. Then you have kind of your internal meetings, which again vary depending on what they are, but it could be training, so like a competitor training session, for example, whereby we learn more about a competitor, what they do well, what they don't do so well, so that when we are speaking to businesses that are looking at our platform, we have a good understanding of what they're currently experiencing and kind of position our product in a good way as well. So you have those kind of training, internal meetings, you have your forecast calls, pipeline reviews. There's a number of different types of internal calls that you can have throughout the week. You then also have your stuff around negotiation and pricing calls and going through commercials with teams, going back and forth with legal. Again, didn't do any of that today, but that's all kind of part of the role as being an AE when you get to those later stages of the sales cycle with deals. And then typically each day it's a case of staying on top of your admin. It is a common part of being an AE or a sales rep. It's doing that admin, making sure it's all up to date so that you aren't getting chased for it at a later stage. So those are probably the main things that are going to be your roles as an AE. Again, some days you'll do all of them, some days you won't, but it's kind of the key bits essentially of the role.
About to head out for this evening's run, which is probably just going to be around 5 to 6k mark, nice and easy, zone 2 based. And I've started incorporating runs back into my training in the last few weeks. Nothing crazy, literally just zone 2 runs only, 3 or 4 of them a week, because I have entered a marathon for May 2025. So I want to go for a sub 3:45 attempt again. I've tried it at London this year, but picked up an injury a couple of weeks before, which didn't help. So really want to work towards achieving that time again. So I'll do a more in-depth video on the marathon I'm actually doing, training, plan I'm going to follow, all that kind of thing in a separate video. That is kind of what training's looking like at the moment. So let's go get in this evening's run.
It is freezing. Just coming up to 20 to 9 on the sofa watching a bit of YouTube, and then going to watch a bit of Yellowstone while wearing the recovery boots. So these were a recent purchase on Black Friday because they've been on my bucket list for a while and just finally went ahead and made the purchase. So most evenings now and leading into marathon training and half Ironman training are probably going to look very similar to this. Just feet up, put the boots on, and just do a bit of recovery on the legs, which the last few weeks has felt absolutely amazing. As for today's video, that is going to wrap it up, and hopefully I can start posting more content around tech sales the next few weeks. I'm looking to try and get a few videos out around how to get into tech sales, how to do outbound prospecting, the kind of tools I use, some kind of tips for AEs and SDRs, and then also a video on commission and base salaries for those roles as well, and what the best place to look if you're currently looking to get into tech sales, but also if you're interviewing at current companies, how you can find out, one, what the base salary is that AEs or SDRs are typically earning, and two, if the SDRs and AEs are actually hitting quota at those companies, so achieving the commission and on-target earnings that they say. So a really good website to check out. I'll do a video on that explaining more. But for now, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and see you in the next one.